Good evening, everybody. Welcome back. I thought I'd just do another quick video for the YouTube channel. Heads up, second part of the Fourth Bottom live show, an Art Oddity from 2001, great name by the way, is now available. It'll be available on Rumble in due course and eventually YouTube, but if you want to get access to it tonight, you can start your 7-day free trial of the cheapest tier on Patreon, which is $1 a month, to get this and, well, anything else you can watch in a week. And, well, I suppose you can feel free not to pay for it, but, you know, you might as well. It's $1 a month, it's cheap as chips, and you'll get everything before you would on YouTube. Also, all episodes of the first series of Limmy's show is also available on Rumble now as well, because all the episodes on YouTube got blocked for some reason. It must be a copyrighted show. I mean, it is still, you know, it's not an old classic show. I mean, it started in 2010, so... And it's available on BBC iPlayer right now, Limmy's show, so I guess it's copyrighted. Anyway, the video I'm going to check out is Top 10 Scariest British Criminals. I thought it'd be a fun one to check out, to see how many of them I've heard of, how many of them I know. I've got a bit of an idea who I think will be on this list, but we'll see. We'll see if I was right. If I see someone on this list that I thought would be, I'll let you know. But let's see which 10 they went with.
Was shot through the head. He actually made a triumphant gesture at the camera after he killed her.
Fred and Rosemary West. Between
Obviously.
them, the West raped, tortured, murdered and dismembered 12 women, including 2 of their own daughters.
Hey, how's it going YouTube? I'm your host for this one, Landon Dallitzing, and today we actually have a special guest here from our sister channel, Top 5 Scary Videos. So today we have Jack. Whoa, Jack!
What's going on, guys? You may recognise me from over at Top 5 Scary Videos, the scariest channel on YouTube, may I add. My name's Jack Finch, and as always, It's an absolute pleasure to be chilling with you guys over at Most Amazing Top 10.
And you know what? Top 5 Scary Videos, your channel, is getting more subscribers than we are right now. What's going on, guys? You guys are killing it over there.
It's the t-shirts, I think.
You think so?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, you guys should check it out. You guys can click right over here. But let's get right into this one. So today we're going to be talking about some of Britain's most dangerous and hideous criminals that have shocked the nation. So this is the top 10 scariest British criminals, and that's why we have Jack to help us out with this one.
Am I number 10?
You're the criminal, yeah. So at number 10 we have Jack.
Coming in at number 10, Charles Bronson, probably the most notorious British prisoner of all time.
Right, I thought that Bronson would be on the list, but do you know what? People go on about how he's the most notorious British criminal. He's never killed a single person. He's never killed anybody. And I am one of the people who have been saying for years, he deserves to be released. He's an old man now, and I'm pretty sure he's got cancer, and he's dying. Let him out. He's served his time.
And a very apt entry to kick off this list. Bronson is so infamous in the British criminal world that he's even been portrayed on the silver screen by the one and the only Tom Hardy. Born Michael Gordon Peterson on the 6th of December 1952, he later changed his name to Charles Bronson after the famous American actor.
Let me know if you want me to do like a first time watching in a long time type reaction of the Bronson movie. I haven't seen it in years, but I do remember that Tom Hardy played him.
He was fighting in the British underground bare-knuckle boxing scene. Bronson has been referred to in the British press as the most violent prisoner in Britain and has spent the majority of his life behind bars after initially being sentenced for armed robbery in 1974. Although he's been released several times, Bronson has always ended up back behind bars and was given a discretionary life sentence in 1999. Despite this, in recent years, Charles Bronson has changed his name to Charles Salvador after taking up life as an artist and reportedly turning over a new leaf. He has pleaded his reform on numerous occasions, stating that Charles Bronson died in 2014 and that he leads a new life as Charles Salvador, hoping to be released in 2020.
Harold Shipman makes its way onto this list at number 9. He is the type...
Harold Shipman, only number 9. Are they doing this in ascending order? Because if they are, Harold Shipman should be in the top 3. He's literally the most... like by body count, the worst serial killer this country's ever known. Literally directly responsible for the death of over 100 people. Only 9th on the list? Really? And I know they're probably going to say, well, it's not like he, tortured people to death, but the way he killed people is quite sick. He went to their houses as their doctor. They're expecting to get help from their doctor, and instead he drugged them to death. I'd say that's just as evil as, really? Only 9th? That's interesting.
A guy who will make you never trust your doctor again.
Yeah.
And here's why. He was a British general practitioner and a serial killer who murdered at least 215 of his patients. His favorite method of killing his victims was to inject them with a lethal dose of drugs. Originally, he was only convicted of 15 murders, but after an official investigation was done, it was determined that he had killed hundreds of other people between the years of 1975 and 1998. He was convicted in January of 2000, and he was sentenced to life in prison, but he was found hanging in his cell 4 years after his trial. Yeah. Could he be any more ironic? I bet he killed more than he saved as a doctor. Probably. Just so messed up.
Coming in now at number 8, Ronnie and Reggie Kray. Strangely enough, another set of British criminals that Tom Hardy has played on the silver screen, this time twice. The names Ronnie and Reggie Kray are synonymous with the British underworld and London gangland, and you probably...
Yeah, alright, but they weren't like typical criminals. They were gentlemen criminals, the Krays. But they were involved in a lot of messed up stuff.
Probably won't find anyone in Britain who hasn't.
Would you say that the Krays are scarier than Harold Shipman? Like, say all three of them lived in your town. Who would you be most scared of? Who are you most likely to have an encounter with? The Krays that are like high up in the criminal industry, or a GP? Who are you most likely to meet? You'd be more scared of Shipman. Surely, right? Unless you're a criminal, you're not going to bump into the Krays and cross them, are you? So, I don't agree with that.
Hasn't heard of these pair. They were notorious for being the perpetrators of organised crime in the East End of London during the 1950s and 1960s, alongside their gang known originally as The Firm, which led them to be involved in such nefarious activities as murder, armed robbery, hijacking, arson, protection racketeering and countless assaults. The Kray twins were born on the 24th of October 1933, just 10 minutes apart, to parents Charles David Kray and Violet Annie Lee, and lived a life of such prolific notoriety that they were cemented into British culture as two of the most dangerous brothers to have ever lived.
Fred and Rose West hacked their way onto number 7 on our list. They were a married couple who abducted, tortured, sexually abused, and murdered women over a period of 20 years. Their killing spree also included some of their own children. Their house on Cromwell Street contained an awful secret. Their basement was set up as a torture chamber and a graveyard. The basement was also equipped with bondage and torture devices, and they had the ability to hang their victims from the wall and ceiling. Together they might have killed around 30 women, but they were only charged with 12 murders. Fred West committed suicide before his trial started, and West is currently serving a life sentence without the possibility.
Didn't she die recently, Rose West? She was in the news for some reason not that long ago, but I don't know if it's because she died, but I can remember seeing her in the news. It better not have been for some kind of compassionate parole or some bullshit like that. Never let her out. That sadistic bitch stays in forever. End of. But she was in the news for some reason not long ago, I remember.
Of parole.
Next up at number 6, Peter Sutcliffe. Also known as the Yorkshire Ripper, Peter Sutcliffe terrorised the British nation between 1975 and 1980, horrifying the public with the very specific conditions that his crimes contained. In 1981, he was convicted of murdering 13 women and suspected of the attempted murder of 7 more.
Literally operated in my postcode, this guy.
Cliff, who lived in the Yorkshire area of Leeds and Bradford, was believed to regularly use the services of prostitutes and claimed that the voice of God had sent him on a mission to kill these women. The nation was shocked when his modus operandi would later change and he began killing women who weren't prostitutes, which inevitably sent the Yorkshire public into a panic. He was initially arrested for driving with false number plates when police questioned him about the killings on a chance encounter, and he confessed to being the perpetrator. Sutcliffe would later plead insanity, but his claim was later rejected and he was sentenced to life imprisonment, where he remains to this day.
Next up on this creepy list.
Again, didn't he die recently? I'm pretty sure he did. I'm sure the Yorkshire Ripper's now dead.
And at number 5, we have Amelia Dyer. She was originally trained as a nurse, but she eventually switched her career path and decided...
In fact, wasn't it COVID that killed the Yorkshire Ripper? Or was that Rose West? I can't remember.
To take a stab at baby farming. This was a practice of adopting unwanted babies in exchange for money. She would prey on mothers who couldn't afford to keep their babies, so she would...
Yeah, right. The Yorkshire Ripper died in 2020. Born in Bingley. That's about 3 miles away from me. Yeah, died in 2020, age 74. Yep, died from COVID-19. And Rose West... Oh no, she's still alive. So why was she in the news recently? But no, she's still alive, unfortunately. Right. Amelia Dyer. Is she the Victorian nanny that killed a load of babies?
Money. She would prey. This was a practice of Amelia Dyer. Next up on this creepy list, and at number 5, we have Amelia Dyer. She was originally trained as a nurse, but she eventually switched her career path and decided to take a stab at baby farming. This was a practice of adopting unwanted babies in exchange for money. Yeah. She would prey on mothers who couldn't afford to keep their babies, so she would offer to give them a better life, but instead, she pocketed the money and strangled the baby to death with tape and dumped their bodies in the River Tame. She was able to get away with these horrific murders for over 30 years until she was caught and hung for her crimes. But you
wouldn't think anything of it, would you? Because in those days, babies died every single day. Like, there's a quote from those days. It was one of the worst times to be born. Because, like, every 1 in 3 babies died or something. So, all these babies dying all of a sudden. No one and they're from mothers that don't want them. So, no one's going to ask any questions. It was like the perfect crime. No wonder she could keep it up for 30 years. But that is sick. Oh, Jesus.
Managed to murder at least 400 babies during her murdering spree in the 1800s. Okay, biting his way onto this list at number 4, we have Stephen Griffiths.
Wait, no, that makes her the worst serial killer then. If she killed at least 400 babies, she's worse than Harold Shipman. And she's only 5th on the list? They're putting Stephen Griffiths above her. Really? Again, I know that was awful, but... Wait, is this the guy?
He is notoriously known as the Crossbow Cannibal, and his story almost sounds too crazy to be real.
Oh no, I thought this was the guy that killed those 2 little girls. But even, 400 babies versus, I don't know. How are they ranking this? It's hard to... They haven't said how they're ranking it. Ascending order, descending order. And it's not just, the fact that she killed them all. It's the fact that she took them from women who couldn't afford to raise their kids, paid them for their children, and promised to give them a better life. And did that 400 times. That's worse than certain other things. You see where I'm going with that?
But trust me, it is. His favorite pastime included murdering women with a crossbow and then eating their body parts. He actually turned his bathroom into a slaughterhouse where he would dismember his victims in the bathtub.
See, he just looks like any random guy I'd expect to see in the pub, and he was shooting women with crossbows and eating them in his... Oh.
With power tools, and then he would start to eat his favorite body parts, in which I don't know what they are, and I'm just not going to question it. So this guy actually took their body parts and stored them in the fridge until he got hungry, and then
that's Jeffrey Dahmer levels of fucked in the head.
Would start cooking them in the oven. He was actually diagnosed as a very violent psychopath at the age of 17 years old.
Really?
But despite all of these warning signs and red flags, he managed to kill 3 women, and now he's currently serving a life sentence without the possibility of parole.
And coming in at number 3, Dennis Nilsen. And we're about to head down the hole of one of the most gruesome serial killers in British history. Dennis Nilsen, a Scottish serial killer and necrophile who murdered at least 12 young men, more than likely more, in a...
Wait, I know who that is. David Tennant played him, didn't he? Yeah, David Tennant played him. I haven't seen it, but I remember seeing something about him. Yeah, I have heard of him then. Right. I need to watch that.
Series of brutal and deranged killings committed between 12 young men, more than likely more, in a series of brutal and deranged killings committed between 1978 and 1983, all of which took place at several of his residences in London, England. Nilsen's modus operandi often targeted young, homeless, homosexual men, which he lured to his 2 North London addresses through guile and deception, often plying them with alcohol and then murdering them by strangulation. He kept the bodies beneath his floorboards, sometimes for periods as long as 8 months, and would then observe the bodies in a strange, twisted ritual. He would dispose of the remains after dissecting them by either burning them on a bonfire or flushing them down a toilet. His crimes were discovered when
flushing them down oh wait, he didn't do like the Breaking Bad style of body. Oh no. He put them in hydrofluoric acid and then poured it down the oh no.
Plumber eventually discovered the remains of bones and flesh blocking the pipes of his shared flat, and he was sentenced to life in prison, where he died in 2018 at the age of 72.
And how do we do a list like this and not talk about this next guy? Well, Jack the Ripper brings us to number 2. Jack the Ripper is one of England's and the world...
Jack the Ripper. Probably the only person on this list that we don't actually know who he is. Crazy that, isn't it? You know, Jack the Ripper. Nobody knows who he is. There's rumours, you know. There's a very strong theory that he was a member of the royal family. Because that's, you know, an explanation why he got away with it. A member of the royal family that had a taste for those kind of experiences, and they helped him cover it up. That's a very popular theory, but no one's been able to work out who he was. It's mental.
World's most infamous murderers, because he was never captured and his identity remains unknown. He terrorized the Whitechapel district of London in 1888, where he brutally murdered and mutilated at least 5 prostitutes. In each of his murders, the victims' throats would be slashed and the body would be severely mutilated, which indicated that he had some kind of knowledge about the human anatomy. Despite several investigations, the police had hundreds of suspects, but they weren't able to definitely arrest anyone. So even till this day, Jack the Ripper's identity and motive remains to be one of the biggest mysteries. Alright, question for this guy right here, Jack the... What's your last name?
Finch.
Finch, okay. Do you know the anatomy?
It's not the Ripper.
No. Do you know, how good are you with human anatomy?
Very poor.
Okay, good. So you're not Jack the Ripper?
I'm glad I'm not trying. And to finally end this gruesome list, we have one of Britain's first recorded female serial killers, Mary Ann Cotton. Known as the Black Widow, Cotton is reported to have murdered around 21 people, including 3 of her own husbands, apparently in order to collect on their insurance policies, which she would use to establish...
The Black Widow, yeah. That's quite a popular trope in comedies, when they do an episode about some bloke's wife trying to kill him. They did it in Still Game. So she's the Black Widow, right?
A new life, and even more horrifically, she was responsible for the death of 11 of her 13 children. Born Mary Ann Robson on the 31st of October 1832, yes, that is Halloween, in County Durham, England, Cotton's modus operandi was to use arsenic poisoning, learned from her time as a nurse, that would slowly cause gastric pain in her victims and ensure a rapid decline.
Looks like an illness. Because they didn't know arsenic was dangerous back then. In Victorian times, wallpaper was made from arsenic. That's how they made the colours in wallpaper. They used arsenic and lead. And it was just bare on your walls. And people were breathing it in every time they were in, every minute they were in the house. So they wouldn't have known. Because they didn't know it was dangerous.
Of health. Now, this process was mostly undetectable until it ensure a rapid decline of health. Now, this process was mostly undetectable until it appeared that almost everyone Mary Ann Cotton knew started to die around her. It kind of raised a few red flags. She was trialed and sentenced to death by hanging on the 24th of March 1873, where she died on the gallows, not by her neck breaking, but by strangulation caused by the rope being rigged too short. Many believe that this action was deliberate. Gnarly stuff, gnarly video.
Alright, so this is the end of the video. It's glad to know you are not Jack the Ripper, I think.
Right, I'm not listening to these two because I don't find them funny in the slightest. But yeah. So it turns out I've heard of all of them. But, you know, obviously, you grew up in the UK, you're going to hear about most of these people, aren't you? I mean, obviously, I'm a Yorkshireman, so I'm going to have heard of the Yorkshire Ripper, Harold Shipman, you know, he was... Was he Barnsley he was operating in? I'm sure he was from Yorkshire or around here. And all the others. Stephen Griffiths, I haven't heard the name, but I've heard the crossbow cannibal before. I just haven't heard his actual name. Well, it wasn't familiar to me anyway. I'm sure I heard it on the news when it was happening. And the Black Widow, Jack the Ripper, obviously. Dennis Nilsson. Amelia Dyer. I've heard of someone. Yeah, I've heard the name. There you go. A lot of sick people on that list, wasn't there? It's just all those people got caught. Jack the Ripper didn't. You know, it's just a bit strange. When you start reading into that royal family member theory, it starts getting weirder. Because it makes a lot of sense when you become... When you read into it, it is, you know, it's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But we'll never know who he is. There's nobody alive from that era. They're all gone. The bodies from that time period, they're all dust or bones by now. You're never going to find him. So it's going to be one of them things that we can't solve, which is, yeah. And the Yorkshire Ripper was very, very close to being that way as well. You know, the amount of time it took to finally catch him, and it was a shit show. Yorkshire police looked like a joke. And they didn't even catch him. In the end, technically. They pulled someone over for number plates, and he confessed. So, But anyway, yeah, I'd heard of all of them. If there's a part 2 to this list, then I suppose I'll have a look at that as well. So I'm sure there's more than 10 serial killers. But for me, I'm not sure if Charles Bronson should be on the same list as Harold Shipman and some crazy bitch that killed 400 babies and the Wests and Jack the Ripper, the Yorkshire Ripper, because he didn't do anything close to what these people did. He'd never killed anybody. He hasn't killed a single person. He's not responsible for the death of a single person. Everyone else on this list was. Multiple people. He shouldn't be on this list. I'm not even sure the Crays should be on this list. Because they never killed anybody innocent. They only killed other criminals in rival gangs and organisations. So again, they never killed, you know, innocent bystander. As long as it's criminals killing criminals, it's not exactly a bad thing, is it? Compared to if they killed some random person on the street to make a statement. They didn't do that. So yeah, if it was up to me, I'd take the Craig twins and Charles Bronson off this list and replace them with I don't know, Raoul Moat and Lucy Letby. Yeah, Raoul Moat and Lucy Letby. Replace Charles Bronson and the Craze. Fair? Yeah? That's fair. That's just my opinion. So let me know what you thought of this list. Do you agree? And if you want to see the part 2, let me know. If it exists. I don't know if it exists. I'm sure it does. I'll have a look for it. But thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Good night.